continues. Live from the Sky News Centre, To The Point with Christina Keneally and Peter Van Onselen.
Welcome to The Point. I'm Christina Keneally. Joining me instead of Peter Van Onselen, Laura Jays, sitting in the industrious Laura Jays for the bludgeoning Peter Van Onselen. We are joined this afternoon by the hardworking, because he is hardworking, he was on Sky News last night, he's back again today, the Finance Minister, Matthias Cormann. Welcome to The Point.
Good to be here.
Our colleague Paul Murray is reporting that the government's commissioned ads to promote a $16 billion improvement to the budget bottom line. Can you confirm that?
Well, I've read these reports in the papers today. You shouldn't always believe everything you read in the newspaper.
I don't, but I believe Paul Murray. I believe Paul Murray. Come on.
I'm obviously not going to speculate on what is going to be in the budget on the 3rd of May, but let me just say these reports are wrong. First time I'd heard of these particular propositions, they're not accurate.
The ads themselves, because the lines I have, and this is line by line, new and important changes are happening to Australia's tax and super system. These will make the system fairer and continue driving economic growth. We need superannuation to be flexible enough for everyone, particularly low-income earners. That would be in line with what the government wants to achieve, wouldn't it?
Sounds like some good positive messages, but let me just say that I'm not going to add to the pre-budget speculation. These are not, I mean, what was reported in the media today, what Paul Murray talked about yesterday, is not something that I'm aware of. It's not something that is, in our view, accurate.
But superannuation tax concessions, though, more generally, clamping down on multinationals and increasing the tobacco excise, for example, they're all savings and measures that you could sell, that a coalition government could sell in the upcoming election campaign, speaking hypothetically, of course.
Well, we've long been working to ensure that multinationals pay their fair share of tax in Australia, and of course, I mean, you would have seen it in the last budget, and indeed in the last budget update before Christmas. We made some announcements in relation to this. In the context of this upcoming budget, as we've said for some time, we are focused on making sure that we continue to successfully transition from resource investment driven growth to broader drivers of growth in a diversified economy. As part of that, we want to ensure that our tax system is as growth friendly as possible.
These are growth measures?
Well, we are wanting to make sure that our tax system is as growth friendly as possible, and in that context, as we've said for some time, we're reviewing the tax mix, we're reviewing whether the tax system can be improved to ensure we raise the necessary revenue for government in the best possible way.
So you're saying that there won't be significant cuts in this budget, because we've seen many economists say if you do cut too deeply, that is an inhibitor to growth. Are you of that view?
Well, what I'm saying is that the budget will be delivered on the 3rd of May. In the meantime...
No, you're talking about growth, Minister.
Our focus very much is on making sure that the Australian economy continues to successfully transition from resource investment growth to broader drivers of growth. In that context, of course, it is important that we continue to repair the budget. So you can expect the government to continue to work to keep spending under control, to get spending under control, and to keep spending growth under control, and you can expect the government to continue to work to ensure our tax system is as growth friendly as possible.
But can I come back to the $16 billion figure? I appreciate you're not going to confirm or deny, but let's talk about what it represents. You know, what's out there is that it's going to be a $16 billion improvement across the forward estimates. Labor's announced $100 billion worth of savings and revenue measures across 10 years. Where do you think that figure needs to sit? What type of improvement to the budget bottom line do we need to have across the forward estimates in order to stave off the threat of a credit downgrade?
Well, Labor has announced $100 billion in additional taxes over the next decade to spend all of that money and more. So what Labor has announced is to tax more, to spend more, and to go further into debt, and that is bad for economic growth, which is why we're saying our proposition, if you want to talk about the generic approach, our proposition is to tax better without increasing the overall tax burden, not to tax more, to spend more. And if you look at some of the individual tax measures that Labor has put on the table, they will damage growth, they will damage investment, they will damage jobs. There are proposals in relation to negative gearing will drive housing prices down, they will increase the cost of rent, they will reduce the level of investment in the housing sector. Their proposal to increase capital gains tax by 50% will reduce the level of investment and will have a negative impact on growth. Our focus when it comes to tax is to tax better and to tax raise the necessary revenue for government in a better, less distorting way in the economy without increasing the overall tax burden in the economy.
So you're going to tax better. Presumably you're going to want to cut spending. It's currently at 25.9% of GDP. What figure would you like to see that out across the forward estimates? And to come back to that point, when you say you're going to tax better, does that mean you are going to be looking at a growth? You are going to acknowledge we have a revenue problem, and we are going to see increased taxation in this budget?
Well, we're not going to see an increase in the overall tax burden in this budget. I mean, the extent to which we have a revenue challenge.
So even if you include something like the cigarette excise, there's going to be an offset somewhere else?
Well, the budget will be delivered on the 3rd of May, but the extent to which we have a revenue challenge, that is because economic growth needs to be stronger. We want to raise the revenue for government on the back of stronger growth, not on the back of higher taxes, which actually is bad for growth. On the spending side, if you look at the most recent budget update, the projections are for spending as a share of GDP to track down from 25.9% this year to 25.3% in the final year of the last forward estimates. Obviously, our focus continues to be on bringing spending as a share of GDP down year on year and on improving the underlying cash balance year on year from the situation that we were in when we came into government.
How do you prioritise getting the budget back to surplus, given that you've spoken about growth and how important it is for our transitioning economy? So how important is it to get back to the surplus? Do you want to see it within a 8-year timeline, or are you willing to push that out further than what we saw in MyEFO?
Our focus is on getting back into surplus as soon as possible in a way that is economically responsible. We've been very candid about that with the Australian people. As a country, we've been facing additional global economic headwinds that we've had to deal with. But in Australia, our economy is actually growing comparatively strongly at 3%, which is higher than the OECD average, which is higher than any of the G7 countries around the world. Our unemployment rate at 5.7% is below the OECD average. Employment growth is quite strong. So we're heading in the right direction. What we are going to do in this budget is essentially put forward our 4-year plan, our economic plan for the next 4 years, to ensure that we continue to successfully transition from resource investment driven growth to broader drivers of growth.
So how concerned are you about the Moody's warning, because they don't seem to think that the track that we are on is sustainable to reach a return to surplus in 2021, and there are reports today that if Australia were to lose its AAA credit rating, the New South Wales and Victoria would follow suit. I've got to say, as a former state premier, I'd be undelighted if my state lost their credit rating because of the Commonwealth.
Well, I don't think that is what Moody's said. I mean, obviously,
Moody's, but there are reports today that the sovereign could not have a lower credit rating than the states.
Well, obviously the Commonwealth is absolutely committed, the federal government is absolutely committed to continue with responsible budget management, and we are committed to continue down a path where we get the budget back to balance as quickly as possible in a way that is economically responsible. I mean, that's what we believe the ratings agencies will see, will want to see. We, of course, are focused on making sure that we maintain our AAA credit rating, and we're making decisions accordingly. But the important point here is people across Australia don't want us to take this sort of report as a license to just ramp up taxes. Labor wants to increase taxes by more than $100 billion over the next decade and spend all of the money that they intend to raise. That is not good for the economy. It's not good for growth. It's not good for jobs. We want to strengthen growth. We want to create more jobs.
Minister, how difficult has this process been? Because we've seen now successive governments, both Labor and the Coalition, talk about the need to get our spending under control. We saw that not being done under Rudd and Gillard, and some headway made under Abbott. But even Scott Morrison admitted that the savings that were made had already been spent. So when you go line by line through the budget, they're not that obvious, are they? The savings and the measures that you can announce. Has it been quite difficult to do that?
Well, firstly, the previous Labor government had several waves of increased spending, including in the dying days of the previous government when they made a series of unfunded, unaffordable spending promises in relation to state schools and state hospitals and various other matters. Now, when we came into government, the economy was weakening, unemployment was rising, the budget position was rapidly deteriorating on the back of an unsustainable spending growth trajectory. We have been able to turn that situation around. The economy is now stronger, employment growth is stronger, the unemployment rate is lower than what had been anticipated, and the budget is now heading in the right direction on a more believable, credible path back to surplus. Now, obviously, I mean, we over the last 3 years have made quite some progress. We have faced some additional challenges, global economic headwinds and additional challenges in the Senate. So we are not as far advanced as we would have liked to be, but we are in a much stronger position than we would have been if we had not changed the policy settings that we inherited from Labor.
Minister, you're also the Special Minister for State. I want to turn very quickly. Yesterday in question time, Mark Dreyfus asked the Treasurer on your behalf if you would direct the AEC to report if the Free Enterprise Foundation has complied with all Commonwealth electoral laws. Will you do that?
Well, since I was asked this question yesterday on Sky, I've looked at exactly what Mr. Dreyfus has actually said in the House of Representatives. I don't have the power to direct the Australian Electoral Commission. The Australian Electoral Commission in our system, in our democratic system, acts independently, as it should. That is a very important feature of our democratic system, that it acts independent from political interference. And if Mr. Dreyfus has got genuine concerns, he should address them to the Electoral Commission and not just play politics.
How much of a problem is this? Because I understand it that the Electoral Commission won't even consider this matter and releasing those funds until the 8th of June. We'll be well into an election campaign by then. So is this hampering the coalition's ability to campaign?
Well, you're now raising a different issue. You're raising an issue at a state level in New South Wales, and that is a matter for New South Wales processes to resolve.
But it's administration funding that keeps the New South Wales Party office operating.
So if I may finish my answer. So obviously, from the Liberal Party's point of view, and the Prime Minister, the Treasurer, myself, everyone, we've all said, obviously we expect the Liberal Party organisation to comply with all relevant laws, and we would expect that to happen.
Can I ask you just one final question about ASIC? It's my understanding that the government will announce new measures to beef up ASIC, which will mean a restoration of funding of about $100 million, moving to a user pay system, greater oversight over responsible lending, a huge emphasis there, financial advice, the life insurance industry, and will also speed up 2 key recommendations in the Murray Review, which looks at greater penalties and product intervention. Now, I don't expect you to confirm all of those issues here today, but does that sound about right? Would you be happy with those measures, hypothetically, once again, if they were implemented?
Well, you're certainly right to suggest that a lot of work has been done by the government to look at how we can strengthen and further improve the effectiveness of ASIC. We've had the financial systems inquiry, we had a capability review into ASIC. The government has been working through many of these issues, and I'm very certain that there'll be relevant announcements by the responsible minister very soon.
Sounds like you're pretty pleased with that list, though.
Well, I'll let you do the commentary.
Finance Minister Mathias Cormann, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Always good to talk to you.